Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. Hope everyone's enjoying their day and sipping their favorite adult beverage out of their Juxtaposition 1 coffee mug, which can contain the adult beverage of your choosing. All right, let's get busy. This is a channel for brutal truth. If you are a new person, you probably want to fasten your seatbelt, put on some eye protection goggles, and a helmet. That's just good common sense and safety. All right, so today's video will be entitled NATO Chain of Command. NATO Chain of Command. And when I say NATO, what I really mean, of course, is Swiss Bank Authority. That's who rules the world. Swiss Bank Authority. They make all the rules. They make the gold. They make the money. They create money out of thin air. So it's the golden rule. And remember, he who makes the gold makes the rules. And that's Swiss Bank Authority. That would be Liechtenstein, which is a sovereign nation inside of the sovereign nation of Switzerland, 26 cantons. People from Liechtenstein make the rules. And do you know that they don't follow their own rules? Do you know that? You know, the rules are for the slaves, they're for the serfs, and for the officer category. Officers. So if you're an executive vice president of Lockheed or IBM or Ford or General Motors, you don't have to make any decisions about what kind of cars to build because Geneva, Switzerland will tell you to make electric cars and electric motorcycles. In other words, the executives of all the college of corporations throughout the world, international corporations, do not actually have any real leaders working. The CEO, chairman of the boards, the executive vice presidents, like, John Ramsey, for example, for Lockheed, they are clueless clowns in the circus. Yes, the circus that is pointed out most vividly and disturbingly and most brutally here at the Juxtaposition 1 Truther channel. Banned for life at YouTube. Proud to say that I'm banned at a poppycock balderdash mendacity military platform called YouTube. Yes. And by the way, this airplane that I'm sitting in is a SR-72 enhanced model. I never said that this is an SR-71. I said that I know people who flew the SR-71 and set world records in it. This plane is twin seats in the front with multiple monitor screens for all the weapon systems that are deployed and activated in this airplane. It's SR-72 plus. That means this is Mach 5 plus, Mach 5 plus. This plane is faster, quicker, smarter than is any SR-71 or any SR-71 indoctrinated clueless clown pilot, which is who flies those things. All right, people that pledge allegiance to a Swiss 13 stripe flag, it's not such a red letter day, right? When your pilot is believing in patriotism, honor, code, God, country, honor, code, God, country. If you're one of those flag waving clueless clowns that believes in honor, code, God, country, and Donald Trump's going to save you, you have a democracy and you have a participation in your government, get off my channel now. Get the hell out of here because I'm going to blow your little pea brain. This is not a channel for peanut gallery, peanut sized minds. It's a channel for paid members only who want to be educated and have their tenets of thinking and deductive reasoning skills honed and tested. Okay, they want their beliefs tested. This is not for dogma. This is not for pledging allegiance and reciting a memorized national anthem. That's not what this is all about. If you want the national anthem, you watch the stupid steroid bowl and you watch pop artists like Madonna and Michael Jackson at the Rose Bowl and Taylor Swift and Billy Shears or Paul McCartney or whoever the hell that was to a Super Bowl. None of the performers at the Super Bowl actually sing into their microphone. It's all lip sync. They may be singing, but the microphone's turned off. They're performing on stage to a soundtrack. All right. It's not just Taylor Swift. It's it's Paul McCartney. It's Madonna. All right. Honor, code, God, country. This is the kind of brainwashing that goes on in the military. All right. And General George Patton would know well. So would Douglas MacArthur. So would Robert E. Lee. So would U.S. Grant. So would William Tecumseh Sherman. All people who graduated from West Point. I happen to have had two West Point officers be long-term clients of mine for 30 years. Okay, which is a pretty long time to be of service, right? Anyway, George Patton will talk about moral clarity, that war can be unambiguous, that it can lead to pride, honor, duty, and hopefully it leads to glory and victory, right? Glory follows victory. And then if you are victorious and you're lucky enough not to get on the battlefield, don't get sacrificed by your commanding officer in the field of battle, which, by the way, many people are sacrificed. But let's just say you're fortunate, you're one of the fortunate few that did not have to be killed in battle, then you might be able to participate in a 4th of July tumultuous parade or tumultuous celebration of battles gone by, wars past tense, that become celebrated by people such as Victor Davis Hanson, for example, who's a chicken hawk with no actual hands-on military experience, but he'll be happy to recite to you the glory of war, the pride, the honor, the tumultuous celebration of killing your fellow men, right? You know, like My Lai, where over 300 NATO army men killed and murdered and maimed, bayoneted and shot with M16 rifles and rocket-propelled grenades. Over 650 women and children and pregnant women and old men in the villages of My Lai, which is a hamlet of at least 3 different villages, and required colonels flying around in airplanes with turboprop planes in the air and air superiority and perfect overhead helicopter view of the battlefield, which is comical since the enemy was unarmed. It's not much of a battle. It's more of a eugenics extermination plan. That was My Lai. That was a NATO exercise. NATO. It was in response to the My Lai. The My Lai was in response to the Tet Offensive, which could not have happened unless the NATO Da Nang weapons port facility actually armed the enemy. That's right. The Viet Cong, you know, the ones that Jane Fonda visited later in Hanoi in the 1970s. She went to Hanoi. The U.S. Marines couldn't invade Hanoi. The United States Army couldn't invade Hanoi. Okay. The Air Force could not invade Hanoi, but Jane Fonda could. And she's a 30-something-year-old actress who Barbarella plays, and also she was Clute, a prostitute. So it takes a Hollywood prostitute, Barbarella sex kitten, and she waltzes right in there and does a photo op with a surface-to-air gunnery battery in Hanoi. And she was there for over 10 days with a film crew. So do you see now that you understand that the communist Chinese were partners with the NATO United States Army forces, getting their supplies through Da Nang and Mekong Delta and other supply places throughout Southeast Asia, which would include Bangkok, Thailand, and perhaps airstrips in Cambodia and Laos as well. And also, let's not forget the heroin capital at the time in Burma, where, you know, Judge Older, the hanging judge from the Manson trial, he was flying heroin in and out of Burma before Pearl Harbor. Before Pearl Harbor, the OSS and Switzerland was harvesting opium and processing heroin in Burma, which is not that far from Hanoi, Vietnam. All right. So in other words, the communist Chinese, all right, the evil Russians, the Taliban, the Hezbollah, the terrorist groups, the Red Brigade, are all working for Switzerland, just like the United States Air Force does, except just delete the words United States. Let's just say NATO Air. There is no United States, and there's no sovereignty in America, and the United States is insolvent. So there can be no funding from the Department of Defense. It all has to come from Switzerland. That's who finances the Department of Energy, DARPA, Rand Corporation, and Lockheed, and Northrop, and General Dynamics, and Bell Nuclear Labs, and Raytheon, and Hughes Space and Communications, and TRW, and Apple Computer, and Facebook, and Cisco Systems, and Cypress Semiconductor, and LSI Logic, and the Cray Supercomputer, and Genentech, and Novartis is, and UC Berkeley, and Stanford Research Institute International, and Harvard, and MIT, and Yale, and Princeton, and the Tavistock Institute, and the Aspen Institute, and Hoover Institute, and the Brookings Institute, and the Claremont Institute, and the Frankfurt School, and Cambridge, and Oxford. They're all financed by Swiss Bank Authority. You know, the people that discovered gold in California using Captain John Sutter, who was not a captain, he was a private banker, and he built an elaborate rice farming and alfalfa farming and cattle ranching area in Sacramento County, Yolo County, Yuba County, Sutter County, Plumas County, Butte County, El Dorado counties. That this is a vast 49,000 acre colony that he created in 1839 to 1848 when they rang the dinner here and pick up the gold nuggets the size of golf balls. That was a Swiss bank operation. Anyway, George S. Patton, he likes to celebrate war. He built his career and his fruit salad medals, all on the backs of dead Americans. He believed in momentum, victory, and moral clarity that the war provides. It provides clarity amongst ambiguity. But this, of course, is absurd because all of the world's belief system is based on the metaverse of psychological warfare, which means lying to people about the way the world works. So there can be no clarity about war, which is financed by Switzerland, when Switzerland also writes the history books. Switzerland finances all sides of a war. They finance the terrorism and the what they call the false flag attacks as a prelude to a scripted war or battle or emergency operation, emergency condition, emergency, the Gulf of Tonkin, and a 10-year war in Vietnam. It was never actually a war. It was a state of emergency based upon a false flag attack of the USS Maddox being attacked by fishing boats, wooden fishing boats, by the North Vietnam Navy, which they don't have a Navy. They have fishing boats. Anyway, we use words such as, honor, code, God, country. We use aggressive and consistency and constantly offensive combativeness to be heroic and brave and show valor under duress. Pride, honor, and very direct action and executive action leads to receiving medals of valor. This reflects a belief that war's true celebration is in the achievement of the stated objectives through relentless offense using speed, shock, awe, and overwhelming initiative to break your enemy as quickly as possible. For General George Patton, he liked to call it, quote, very simple, direct, and ruthless, end quote. In other words, a contest of wills where clear goals and decisive action, along with psychological pressure, will force rapid upon your enemy. Well, in case you didn't know, that is what the House of Peace and NATO in Geneva, Switzerland, along with its cohorts of United Nations, which is the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Health Organization, along with immigration policies and farming and soil management, they exert weather warfare and mandatory plandemics, plandemics, hoax pandemics. They use fear and terrorism to make people capitulate to the chain of command, which is today's discussion. And whether you're a Jesuit priest, whether you're a LDS Mormon, whether you're a Church of Scientologist, whether you're a Presbyterian or Episcopalian, or you're a holy roller Pentecostal person, or your name is Joel Osteen with no actual ministry training, he's a motivational speaker turned church leader. If you're a church lady or a church leader or a convent of the Sacred Heart, or you're part of the Santa Clarita School, matters not. You follow a code of obedience and a code of emerita silence, your dirt will be aired. And sometimes you have a custody, which few organizations, and then you have an oath of poverty. Of course, the oath of poverty is voluntary enslavement to the system because you have no escape if you are poor and you have no independent means of supporting yourself. Then you're dependent on your system. And when you find out your system has no ethics and is corrupt, you're still captured prisoner within the cult, right? And no amount of prayer or discipline or unity is going to help you escape from a military cult. You're there for life. It is a lifetime thing, right? And that's just how they roll. So whether we're talking about the Mesopotamia and Egypt and the rulers of the land in Egypt, or whether we're talking about the Roman legions, whether you're talking about the Mongol Empire or the medieval and feudalism masters of the land and farms and ranching, whether you're talking about the the land barons of the development of North America and the destruction of the native people, talking about the Spanish and the French uh, colonial people who came here to rule over and conquer the native people. Whether you're talking about that or not, there's a chain of command involved. Columbus had one. Okay, Sir Francis Drake had one. um, Father Junipero Serra, who established the 21 military missions to colonize California. Every single one of the 21 missions, not only did they have a basilica chapel with a bell tower, they also had an army barracks with men with rifles and bayonets. So essentially, what we're saying is a Franciscan priest by the name of Father Junipero Serra was operating as a Spanish conquistador soldier to, at the point of a gun, baptize native people or shoot them or run them off the farm, slave property, secured hamlet of land that they stole from the native people, the Ohlone, the Miwoks, and several dozen other native peoples of California, had their land stolen and then turned over to Johann Sutter of Switzerland to build a 49,000 acre ranch and farm, then immigrate 1 million people to California that normally wouldn't have arrived, and build out a Lockheed Martin weapons center, today known as China Lake, today known as Death Valley, Father Crowley Star Wars Canyon, Area 51, Area 52, Nellis Air Force Base, the Nellis Air Testing Facility in Nevada, spilling into Death Valley, California. We're talking about Victorville, talking about 29 Palms, talking about Joshua Tree National Park. We're talking about Death Valley, Bureau of Land Management. We're talking about Northrop, Lockheed. We're talking about um, Bell Nokia Labs, Raytheon Missile Guidance, Pratt and Whitney, We're talking about building and weapons, testing them in the desert, over 350,000 acres of military intelligence weapon testing. And the Bureau of Land Management and Sandia Labs and Lockheed and Honeywell are all involved and all getting paid to keep nosy people like myself off the property. And most definitely people out who can things they're not supposed to see. They don't really want bicycle riders in there, but because of the extreme heat and lack of water, it's bicycling is not really a big threat to the military. Motorcycling is, and people with RV campers are, and they keep a real close tab on that. So anyway, the chain of command it applies to all military forces, and there are two types of divisions of military. One is what we call the uniformed military, which would be Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, etc. All right, infantry, air, water, Space Force. Um, Everybody has a uniform, but don't forget, for every uniformed person, there's at least 10 ununiformed contractors who work for many of the corporations I already mentioned. But you can add Apple Computer, IBM, you can add Ford and General Motors, General Electric. They're all military contractors too, just like Exxon, Standard Oil, Chevron, British Petroleum, the Getty family, Getty Oil. They're all military contractors. Half of all their revenue goes to the military. The military buys half of production the military. So if you're in the oil business, you basically work for NATO. Do you get it now? Are you starting to understand how the Strait of Hormuz works? You know that's Dubai, right? You know that's United Arab Emirates. We always talk about Iran, but Switzerland is right there with Dubai. The United Arab Emirates just won the Tour de France for the fifth time. The Swiss just won the Tour de France for the fifth time, and nobody knows it. Switzerland sponsors Dubai. It is a Swiss colony, just like the Vatican is in Rome. That's right. The Pope, Pope Leo, he works for Switzerland. He believes in one world order. Remember, we are one. That's Pope Leo's mantra. We are one. Well, that's Geneva, Switzerland's one world governance. Geneva Global Governance is we are one world order. That's Pope Leo. That's Dubai. That's Dubai. That's United Arab Emirates. That's Tadej Pogacar. That's Mauro Gianetti, who's a part owner and Swiss national. He is the manager of UAE Cycling. Okay, so whether you're operating a FIFA World Cup soccer team, which is, of course, controlled by Switzerland, or World Cup cycling, which is controlled by Switzerland, or whether it's, the Olympics, it doesn't matter. It's all Swiss bank anthropology. And the majority who are involved and work for corporations and or contractors for the major sponsors of the Olympics and Formula One and soccer and sports entertainment, which are Roman circuses. And we've always done that from medieval times, feudalism times. We always have distractions so that the peasants, the slaves on the open air prison, do not understand that that the leaders who now live in Liechtenstein, in Switzerland, and have offices in Geneva, and that attend Davos, but typically do not go on stage. They do not appear on camera. The leaders of the world have no name. They're anonymous. They're part of a circle of trust. They're a pervert circle of trust. They're all very perverted and very compromised people. They never appear on television. Only the schmucks do. Larry Ratfink, for example, managing director of the World Economic Forum and managing director of BlackRock. Stephen Schwartzman, who appears on stage at the World Economic Forum and is the managing director of Blackstone at 345 Park Avenue, Manhattan, New York. And don't forget that the NFL has an office in that building also, right? NFL belongs. That's Roman circuses. Roger Goodell, he has an office at 345 Park Avenue, Manhattan, New York. That building should be demoed. Those offices be closed. Everyone in that building should be arrested and put into a re-education camp. Honor code, God, country. That's the the mating call of a delusional dodo bird. There's no moral clarity in this world. There's only deductive reasoning and using your tenets of thinking. You cannot look to Victor Davis Hanson or Jeffrey Sachs or Anthony Napolitano or Michael LeBron Lionel or Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, went to high school in Geneva, Switzerland, an all boys academy in Geneva. Tucker Carlson, he's Swiss. His father was Dick Carlson, the voice of public radio. You're going to get advice from him. His father worked for CIA. He was ambassador to an atoll of islands off of the coast of Ethiopia, right, in the Indian Ocean. That's right. It's a military base, if you didn't know. I don't think anyone actually lives there except expatriate NATO services. All right, well, anyway, tumultuous celebrations, which are a parade of the conquered people who run in the front, along with the chained slaves, by the area, who has a slave whispering in his ear to remind the emperor, the provisional leader of his strategic hamlet, that all victory and glory remains fleeting. It is fleeting. And that's the message of today's story is just because you follow a chain of command and are rewarded and promoted up the chain, the hierarchy, just because you are designated as being a general or a colonel or a lieutenant commander or have some high rank and privileges to the officer club and a bigger home and a nicer car, just because your name is John Ramsey does not mean that your daughter won't get killed. It does not mean that one of your children may be sacrificed in the battlefield known as Strategic Hamlet management, open air prison, prisoner dilemma game, casualties of war. Just because you are living the dream does not mean your dream won't end in a nightmare. Because honor, code, God, and country are not how the world runs. That is not how our world runs. Our world runs ethos. If you don't have any, then you're going to get kicked to the curb, either by your commanding officer, okay, or your commanding officer's commanding officer, or by a domestic terrorist, what we call the son of anarchy, right? Like a Sonny Barger and the Hells Angels. They may take you out. That's my video for today. Do like and share. I am heavily shadow banned. I am permanently banned at YouTube. I'm quite proud to say that. And YouTube is home to many military veterans who are still delusional in their 13-stripe flag, where they pledge their allegiance, which is the relationship between a slave and a slave owner, to Geneva, Switzerland, to the World Economic Forum, and the NATO Supreme Command. Thanks for listening. Take care now. Bye-bye.